Picture a delivery van being loaded outside a London bakery in 1953. Crates of bread, trays of cakes, cartons of tea, each one accounted for on a slip of paper written by a clerk who did the same sums yesterday and will do them again tomorrow. Now picture a room 2 floors above that bakery. No flour dust, no delivery vans, just the low electrical hum of 8 vertical racks of valves, the click of a paper tape reader feeding numbers into a machine built from mercury-filled tubes, and a small team of engineers watching a printer type out tomorrow's baking requirements before the bakers have even gone home. That machine has no rival anywhere on Earth in 1951. Not in an American university, not in a British government laboratory. It is sitting inside the head office of a chain of tea shops, and it is about to become the first computer in history to run a real business. The company is J. Lyons & Comer. The machine is called LEO. And the story of how a firm best known for scones and stewed tea beat every technology company on the planet into the computer age, and then somehow let that lead slip through Britain's fingers within a generation, starts with an accountant who had been quietly obsessed with machines for 20 years. By the 1920s, J. Lyons & Company is not a small business. It is one of the largest catering operations on the planet. Hundreds of tea shops line British high streets, feeding a nation lunch, 1 pot of tea, and 1 plate of cakes at a time. Behind those shop fronts sits an industrial machine most customers never see, bakeries producing bread and cake by the ton, a laundry service, an ice cream works, and a fleet of delivery vans that has to reach every shop every single day with exactly the right amount of stock. Running that machine is a war of paperwork. Every shop phones in its orders. Every order has to be turned into a baking schedule, a delivery route, an invoice, and a wage packet for the people who made it happen. Lyons employs armies of clerks just to keep the business talking to itself. One of those clerks is not content to just keep the paperwork moving. His name is John Simmons, and by the 1930s he has become the company's chief accountant, and a man with an idea that sounds faintly ridiculous for a tea shop chain, that a machine could one day do this work faster than any office full of people. Simmons has no computer to point to. In the 1930s, nothing resembling one exists outside of a handful of experimental calculating machines built for science, not commerce. What he has is a conviction and the patience to wait for the technology to catch up to it. The chance arrives after the Second World War. In 1947, 2 Lyons managers, Oliver Standingford and Raymond Thompson, travelled to the United States to study new office equipment. What they find is a wartime breakthrough spilling into civilian life. Electronic calculating machines, built to crack codes and compute artillery tables, now being eyed for entirely different jobs. On the journey home, the 2 men sketch out something that has never existed before. A machine that doesn't just calculate, but runs an actual business end to end. They bring the idea back to Simmons, who takes it to the Lyons board. This is where the story could have stalled. Lyons makes cakes and pours tea. It employs no electrical engineers, holds no computing patents, and has never built a piece of technology in its life. But the board says yes, not to buying a computer, none exists to buy, but to helping build one. At Cambridge University, mathematician Maurice Wilkes is constructing an experimental machine called EDSAC. Lyons offers something Wilkes badly needs: money and the services of one of its own engineers in exchange for the right to copy the design once it works. It is in effect a tea company co-financing a university physics project on a bet that it will pay off in payroll processing. The bet pays off. EDSAC runs its first program in 1949. Lyons hires a young radar engineer named John Pinkerton, on Wilkes's own recommendation, to take that design and turn it into something no university machine needs to be: reliable enough to run a real company every single day without fail. The machine that comes out of that effort is christened the Lyons Electronic Office, LEO. In November 1951, LEO runs its first job, calculating the exact cost of every ingredient going into the bakery's bread and cakes. It is a mundane task. It is also the first time in history a computer has done real, routine commercial work. What follows is not a science experiment. It is a business swallowing its own back office, one department at a time. Payroll comes next, a calculation that used to take a clerk 8 minutes per employee, now finished in seconds, run with such discipline that no Lyons worker is ever paid late. Then inventory, then delivery scheduling, shops phone in their orders in the afternoon. And LEO turns that into baking instructions, van routes, invoices, and management reports before the next morning's ovens are even lit. Word gets out. Other companies want in. By 1954, Lyons has built LEO2, formed a separate company called LEO Computers Limited to sell the technology, and started renting out spare computer time to outside firms, including, of all people, Ford's British operation, which has LEO run its payroll rather than build a machine of its own. A tea-shop chain is now functionally one of the first computing-as-a-service businesses on Earth. For a moment in the early 1950s, the company furthest ahead in commercial computing anywhere in the world sells buns for a living. Here is the question that matters. A business this far ahead of IBM, ahead of every American competitor, sitting on a genuine technological monopoly? What does Lyons actually do with it? It sells it cheap and it sells it away. LEO Computers Limited is competing for customers against firms with actual engineering scale behind them, and it does so by underpricing its machines to win contracts. The strategy brings in customers. It does not bring in profit. Lyons is running a computer manufacturer the way it might run a discounted loyalty scheme for tea-shop customers, as a way to build volume, not as a business that has to stand on its own economics. More importantly, nobody at the top ever fully answers the deeper question. Is Lyons a caterer that happens to build computers? Or has it quietly become a computer company that happens to also sell cakes? The company never chooses. It keeps LEO as a division bolted onto a catering business, rather than spinning it out early, fully capitalized, built to compete on computing's own terms. That indecision meets a second force entirely outside Lyons' control. Britain's computer industry in the 1950s and 60s is not one company finding its footing. It is half a dozen. LEO, English Electric, Ferranti, Elliott, ICT, Marconi, all racing on parallel, underfunded tracks. Rather than one of them being allowed to scale the way IBM scales in America, the British government's answer, once it notices the industry falling behind, is consolidation. Merge the small players into one national champion big enough to compete. In 1963, financially stretched, Lyons sells LEO Computers into English Electric. The team that had built the world's first business computer from nothing. The engineers, the systems designers, the people who had actually solved this problem before anyone else on the planet, is folded into a much larger industrial company that also makes turbines and locomotives. The unit that once was the innovation becomes one product line among many inside a conglomerate. What happens next is not a single collapse. It is a slow dissolution by merger, and each merger further dilutes what made LEO work in the first place. English Electric absorbs LEO in 1963. It absorbs Marconi's computer interests the following year, becoming English Electric LEO Marconi. In 1967, it absorbs Elliott Automation too. Each merger adds another incompatible product line, another sales team confused about which machine to actually recommend to a customer standing in front of them. in 1968, under direct government pressure to build one dominant British computer firm capable of standing up to IBM. English Electric's computing arm is merged again, this time with ICT, to form International Computers Limited. 4 companies, 4 different engineering philosophies. One brand arriving 11 years after LEO first proved the entire category could exist. By the time ICL is assembled and ready to compete, the market it was built to fight has already moved. The strategy had been built around large centralized mainframes. The exact category, IBM, already dominates at a scale no merged British conglomerate can match. The engineers who might have pushed something genuinely novel are spread across a company busy digesting its own mergers, rather than building the future. The original LEO team, the men and women who solved a problem nobody else had solved, who ran the first payroll job without a single late paycheck, who built the discipline that would later be called systems analysis, is scattered inside that structure long before ICL exists. The unit disbands in stages, swallowed one merger at a time, until the people who invented commercial computing are simply engineers on someone else's org chart. If you've ever worked with a legacy system nobody wanted to admit was groundbreaking in its day, or you grew up hearing about Britain's lost tech industry, drop it in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more stories about the decisions that built and broke the industries that shaped the modern world, subscribe. There's another one next week. Another.